What is up, guys? Welcome. Now, the speculation on the story for the next patch is well underway, and you guys will be seeing it pretty soon. But for today, I want to talk about some news-type stuff, and some of it's really interesting. You might be thinking, well, what? Hold on, news? That we're not about to have a Living World release? What possibly could have been going on? Well, more than you might expect. So yeah, we'll talk about that today, and then we'll get onto the lore pretty soon. There's also some third-party tools that I've wanted to cover for a long time that hopefully you guys will be seeing this week as well. So let's jump straight in. First of all, kind of on the newsy side thing, but for me personally, and I won't linger on this too long, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who watched that recent video where I started offering audio-only versions of the videos and kind of remembered, I guess, after forgetting that I had a Patreon and showed a wonderful amount of support. That meant the world to me. Thank you so much, guys. And if you missed that video, I guess there'll be a link down below. All right, so let's talk about Guild Wars. The devs had a live stream, first of all. I'm pretty late getting to this. However, it did have some cool information about the new map. As you guys might remember, I was a bit disappointed the script might be in the new map.
A very different idea of what it was going to be, and then it kind of turned into what it is today. You know, I'm obsessive when it comes to the script. Wooden potatoes.
To which Nelly Hughes seems rather disappointed on Twitter. I don't know about the script, okay? Maybe they were okay. It is kind of along the lines of what I mentioned before, how the map has this crazy stuff like the circus and the script, but they do handle it reasonably well because they laugh at themselves and how absurd it is, and that's what's fun about diving into why those people are there. And the script do come with another perk as well, at least that made me think of, and that's the idea of why the script are even on the island. See, the story is that they're pirates that ended up washing up here, and the inference then is that you've got all these script pirate ships running around. And a script pirate ship is actually a very cool concept, right? Like, think about it. These guys communicate so much faster, so much more efficiently when they're close together. And a ship out on the ocean, you know, a well-decked ship with lots of ship hands and script running around everywhere is kind of the perfect place for them to be clumped up and communicate very well. They'd actually probably be really efficient. Imagine getting boarded by a script pirate ship or script navies. It's bizarre, but I think it actually quite works really well. I'd love to see some out at sea someday. So there you go. Maybe the script have some value on the map. Damn it. All right, so let's talk about some of the other stuff. There were some things I missed that this live stream showed me about the map I hadn't even talked about. I actually regret the tour that we did of the map a little in the end because there were a lot of cool things and little touches that I really do think deserve to get a bit of recognition. So, for example, some of the lava pools have little updrafts, but the updrafts are temporary. I regretted that I never really pointed that out to you guys. When I did Living World Season 2 recently and returned to Drytop, their first new Living World-based map that they added, let's not talk about South Sun, they had all these really great little details on there, like sand falls that you would get blinded by if you went under them, and you had the quicksand area that slowed you down a lot and did lots of damage to you. You had lots of little touches everywhere, and I kind of in some ways feel like Bloodstone Fen and the Fire Island chain map so far, Ember Bay, don't have that kind of detail. If you really look for it, in some places it is there. But here's an example of one of those details, right? You remember in the story where you activate the machines to disable the seismic activity? Well, apparently each time you disable one of these machines or activate it, the skulls in the area that are on the map will actually stop being lit up, and they will actually have a visual change. I never realized that was going on at all. Those are really subtle little things I'm glad they pointed out in the stream that I had no idea about. Bit of development story. Apparently the map had lots of tar elementals on it at one point, which seems like they fit, but then tar elementals actually take lots of damage to burning, so it doesn't really make sense. The Karka on the map I think was quite interesting. They talked about how originally that area, and the Karka really are just localized to the southeast and that's it, that area originally was filled with smoke scales. And if you guys remember smoke scales, the highly evasive, lots of damage bursty enemies from Heart of Thorns, that would have been a nightmare with tons of them around. I am a little sadistic part of me excited to see what events would have been like with millions of smoke scales hoarding you after you scale it too high, but they ended up swapping it for the Karka. I do really appreciate that, because whether we like fighting through 2 health bars or not, the fact that the Karka are somewhere else than just South Sun Cove is great. And this fact that they swapped smoke scales for Karka really quickly actually explains some other things, like why there's no real story about the Karka there. They don't really interface with any of the events too much around there, as far as I remember anyway. So I do like that they made that change. The map's kind of interesting as well in that some of the escorts, I believe, are spawning pocket raptors, and I don't remember. Maybe you guys can correct me in the comments. I'd love to hear. I don't remember anywhere in Heart of Thorns where they spawn raptors as a part of events. And I think it's because of scaling. Like, imagine billions of incredibly powerful pocket raptors that have scaled not both in number, but also in power too. And then they swarm you down. But Ember Bay seems to actually do a little bit of that, which is kind of interesting. Another development story they gave, I'll try and whiz through this a bit quicker. The jumping puzzle. Apparently while they were designing it, and they had people testing it, they had rope props that would help people know where to go. And so a lot of people heard this and are saying, oh, this is so rude, you shouldn't test it with rope props when you're expecting the player base to figure out on their own, because that's what frustrated people about the puzzle so much. To me though, I don't think we should have as players had the rope props on there in the end either. I think that's the spirit of the puzzle, trying to figure out where to go. I was actually really shocked by the video I did on the jumping puzzle. There was a lot of saltiness about it. People did not like that puzzle because they didn't like the way that it delivered the difficulty. I quite enjoyed the way that it delivered the difficulty, but it seems like I'm in a bit of a minority. I would say if you find yourself getting really angry about that puzzle, which I saw a few people were, remember, it's not like it's required for the meta. It's just an optional part of the patch. Don't force yourself through it. Walk away. Pretty comfortable in my opinion. All right, so they also said that the story mission, Timey's game where we're in this little VR chamber, was originally going to be like a simulated volcano and there was going to be loads of craziness going on, but they found having too much stimulating stuff in that department going on while we're also supposed to be getting an exposition dump in terms of dialogue from Timey was too much. It would overload players, so they cut it all away. Why do I say this is actually an interesting fact from the live stream though? Because it kind of suggests to me we might see in a future patch they use and implement some of those ideas they had from this one in just an environment where maybe Timey has a little bit less to talk about. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Some other minor comments, like they're not necessarily on a formula to keep reusing raid bosses and new maps. It's just worked for the first two, and that was the live stream for you guys. You can find a link in the description if you want to watch the full thing. Let's move on. We had a patch, okay, so this is where I want to talk about most of the cool stuff that's been going on, and I'm in a bit of a weird place with my channel because I've been lazy, which makes it hard to cover this, but so let's talk about it. Right, Halloween's coming up. It doesn't mean that Halloween started in Guild Wars 2, but they have started putting Halloween gem store stuff in there. Some of these items that you haven't been able to get for a while, like the Phantom Hood or whatever, have come back. Specifically, people really enjoyed, they're putting a lot of flavor dialogue in when Blackline updates happen, and on the patcher even, there was a bit of a slight from Evan Nashblade saying, I'm going as the scariest thing I can think of for Halloween, an Ellen Keel supporter, which people are really enjoying. I hope Arenanet do more of that. I'm kind of conditioned at this point after 4 years to not even read what the Guild Wars 2 launcher says, but apparently some people still are. So one nice change that came with all of this was supposed to come with Ember Bay. Now you guys remember on the login character select screen, you get your little character's portraits in those squares at the bottom, and behind the character is a background representing the area of the world that they're stood. This is a hangover from Guild Wars 1, so if I have a character in Ascalon, it will have a little Ascalon image in the background, and if I'm in Cantha, then it would have a place for Cantha, or that specific region of Cantha. Well, they did it in Guild Wars 2 too, but obviously the last patch, Rising Flames, added a whole new region. I made a big deal out of this before. That's pretty interesting for the way that they handle masteries in the UI, for the way that they handle some of the achievements in the UI, and so on. And one of the little things is, okay, the login screen, the character select, should have a new background. I didn't even think about that, but there was a Reddit thread where people pointed out, hold on, there's not, it still suggests I'm in the heart of Maguma, can you change that maybe? And the devs saw it, so with this patch, there's now a little background on character select. I wanted to talk about that on this video because I feel like this is a perfect example of those really small little things that can slip through the cracks if you're not careful, and they have such a wide pool of stuff to consider when they do these things, when they add new regions. If the next Living World patch takes us deeper into the Shiver Peaks and the Deljamore front, you know, that's something that they'll have to think about again, even after that. What's even cooler, though, coming out of this, I believe somebody asked as well, hey, can we get an opportunity to customize these? So my Sylvari is always showing the Grove background or whatever, and a dev actually said that that would be pretty easy to implement and that they might even look into it, which is pretty cool. Alright, so what's the main thing that came with this patch? It was current events. So I may not have been clear about this in my coverage for you guys. Those of you who are maybe just watching but not playing too much at the moment, we're getting like a Living World patch, and then we're getting a bunch of current events that roll out slowly, or gradually, I say piecemeal, a little bit before the next Living World update comes out, that are kind of on theme for what's going on there. So if you'll remember, on the Bloodstone Fen patch, Out of the Shadows, we witnessed a giant explosion. And after your character saw that explosion, you started getting visions of anomalies all around Tyria. They'd randomly appear, they'd look sad, and then they'd disappear. And we've just been left as a community to wonder, what the hell is this? What's going on? Well, the most recent current events let us play with that a bit more. So it comes in kind of two parts. One is this crazy rift thing, where you get this machine, and you can start tuning the rifts, and you jump through them, and you get teleported all around the world, and I'll talk more about that in a dedicated video coming up. But the other component is now with this patch, if you can quick enough run into one of those anomalies, you get an achievement, and it starts a little quest chain. I am incredibly impressed with this. People who have been following me on Twitter will know how happy I was with this. You know how Guild Wars 2 has for how long now had collections in the game and had this new achievement UI in the game, and they've tried to use it as some kind of weird ham-fisted shoddy substitute for real traditional questing, right? They're trying to use it as a content delivery system instead of a content reward system. And at every single opportunity they've done this, I've considered it a failure, whether it's been from early little things that we saw a long time ago to even legendary collections and scavenger hunts. People say that there's a lot of lore associated with them, but there's really not. You're left to mull over very vague, very minimal little item descriptions and how things pair up. It's really, in my opinion, never been good enough. However, this patch, I eat my hat. I think they did really, really well. What happens is you get this achievement once you walk into the first anomaly, and it's got different steps there. And the next step is, hey, talk to this character, then talk to this character, then do this, then do this, then do this. And it even has a branching end. So this quest not only has good lore in it, it lets us talk to Ogden Stonehealer once again. It teaches us about a new type of bloodstone, basically. Well, it's not actually a bloodstone, called the Shadow Stone. I won't spoil what the details are here. It reveals more about what happens with the anomalies. It is a step-by-step exploration involving items that go into your inventory, and at the end you get to make a decision. And it's a really interesting decision that looks like it will have ramifications for future quote-unquote quests that they add. You get to decide between the Priory or the Consortium. Is excellent, guys, and it might have only been short, and it might have not been something that even everyone's going to see, but I think it's a really good step in the first direction. I think Arenanet have a long way to go with this, don't get me wrong. It's still not repeatable because it's too damn account-bound achievement stuff. It's still not visible to people who haven't played very specific story steps and have followed the news exactly when that specific current event patch comes out. It's still not got any way of reviewing what you did or easily in a nice summed-up location, looking at the entire quest through, I don't know, a quest log that you'd expect anywhere else that they're so scared to put in. It still has these problems, but if you actually get to the content itself, I think this was really, really, really excellent. So it's called the Burden of Choice. It's an achievement, but it's basically a quest, and I'm really excited to see what they do in current events more. So you will see a video on current events on my channel soon. This is one of these things I've been neglecting to do for ages. I wanted to cover each one as it came out, but unfortunately I got caught behind, and now it's like I've got all this stuff to talk about all at once, and I have hours of footage that I've got to scrub through and make sure I get all the right stuff for you guys. But I will do that. You will see a video summing up all the current events, and as more come out, especially if they're going to be these really cool quest things, you can expect me to talk about them a lot more, not just the major releases when, you know, actual Living World episodes drop in. Another big thing with the patch, let's move on from the quest thing, was to do with raiding a little. There is a substantial raiding community building up in Guild Wars 2, built up since they first released the original wing with Heart of Thorns. There's a new doorway. They didn't talk about it anywhere, not in the patch notes, but if you go to the aerodrome, there is a new door there suggesting an entrance to a new raid. If you don't know how this works, the original idea for raids, I think, was to dump them around the world, so the first one was accessible from Verdant Brink, but because that interfered weirdly with player populations and people trying to do meta events and stuff, the devs opened up the aerodrome aerodrome in Lion's Arch where everyone goes now to do LFG or whatever and talk to one another in preparation for raids. And in the aerodrome, lining the walls are all these doors, and so far 3 of them take you to places, to the 3 wings of the original raid. And another one got added this patch. It's got a gate in front of it. You obviously can't go into it. The raid's not there. But it's a suggestion that this raid might be coming a lot quicker than I thought. As I said in a recent video, I thought they were going to really take the time with this next one. Maybe it would be a 1-wing raid for the entire thing, and we'd get some magical experience after a reasonable while, hopefully in the Wizard's Tower or something. But boom, they've already put the door there. That suggests some stuff, right? Even some people were suggesting festival-based raids based on this, because this, of course, comes with some early Halloween stuff. You guys might remember the first year of Halloween. We had a little instance, there was a dungeon where you'd fight against the Mad King, and I wonder whether maybe the new raid they do, this will be like a little mini raid, like a festival-based raid, like really hard, challenging group content, but associated with a festival. I don't know whether you guys like the idea of that, we'll have to see. Alright, so the last thing, guys, is probably the biggest topic, and I think I'm going to talk disappointingly little about it, because I'm in a bit of a weird position with it, but I do want to at least throw my hat out there because I kind of have to. There was another leak. So I've talked a bit about leaks on the channel recently, and a lot of them I think have been pretty hit or miss. Some of them sound really bizarre. I get people whispering me as well, totally unverified people who will say, hey WP, I think this or this, and sometimes it just sounds insane without precedent to me. But there was a pretty public leak earlier in the week about what I can only guess is Expansion Pack 2. The leak could be related to Living World, but I think it's probably X-Pack 2. I have no idea whether it's real, but my gut honestly does say, yeah, this probably is real. I'm not in a position to know that, by the way. The fact that I'm a part of the partner program has nothing to do with any of this. This seems to be a leak from somewhere way deeper inside. People in the partner program right now, as of this video, we don't know anything, okay? But my gut does say that I think there's something very real about this. And a lot of people have been happy about it. I'm not actually going to talk about it too much. And I'll explain why. Now, some people are saying, oh, the leaks are good because they create hype. And they're newts to be hype. You know, there's a subset of the community that won't get excited about the game unless we're talking about expansion stuff and really major things. Living World isn't enough to get them hyped, for example. And they say leaks are really good because what it does is it builds this hype, it builds this discussion, and the community gets galvanized to some level. My opinion is that that's not actually true. What I think happens when a leak occurs about, say, a future expansion pack or whatever, it doesn't create hype, it just borrows it from the initial reveal. So if this leak does turn out to be true, what you're going to find is people are like, oh, I already knew that. Like, it takes the wind out of the sails of the real announcement. And there's a reason why you want to wait for the real announcement, so that the content is actually polished, it's ready to go, it's builds hype at the opportune time, so that then you can actually sell the audience something soon after. It becomes meaningful discussion. Right now it's just rabble, right? So from that perspective, I don't think I'm really going to talk about it too much or publicize it too much, but with one caveat, okay? The more that stuff like this happens, it is going to start factoring into my speculation about where we're going. And if and when that starts happening, say, oh, hey guys, I think the story's going to go do this, I'll give you that caveat and say, but I think this might be based on a leak or whatever, so you can choose whether you actually listen to it or not, and so forth. So if you want to check it out, I'm not going to link to it, but you can obviously just look online, Guild Wars 2 leak, whatever, see what you can think about it. And for those of you who do want the actual information when it's actually ready, as according to the devs, just keep an eye out for spoilers, I guess. The last thing I would say about this that I actually do think is kind of a positive sign in some ways is that I'm actually not surprised this has happened in one respect or two. So you might look back to Heart of Thorns and be like, well, there wasn't any real leaks really with Heart of Thorns. So how comes we're having it potentially for another expansion off in the future? And I guess that's because, you know, Heart of Thorns, as a decision to make an expansion, came really late. They had to abandon the rest of the game, you know, live content. The content droughts began for us so that they could cram it out super quickly. And what did we get? We got some really nice systems and groundwork for the future of the game, but the content was really lacking with Heart of Thorns, right? And it's just evidence that they crammed it out. There wasn't necessarily any leaks for Heart of Thorns because there wasn't a long period of time for those leaks to exist. But if we are now getting expansion 2 leaks, and potentially 1-2 years in advance of any real release, that's a great sign, isn't it? That actually, oh look, they've been making stuff for a while now, they're squirreling away in the background, there's real progress being made, it's gonna have lots of quality and content at the same time. So that kind of makes me smile a little. But there you go, guys. That's the video for today. Again, we'll have lots of lore and juicy things in the future. Feel free to talk about any of these topics down in the comments below. I'll be listening very eagerly. And until next time, hope you guys enjoy. And as I mentioned at the start, if you do want audio-only videos or whatever, I'll have a link to that Patreon video on screen in about 2 seconds. So enjoy, and I'll see you next time. Year's gone. Starting Patreon, if you guys weren't around back then, it was absolutely insane. It was a move that